Hiya, pals! Welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast! Here we go!
Hello and welcome to Mouse Bytes, the show all about Disney video games, past and present. This is episode 16 and I am your host, Jeff, and I'm joined as always by Clay. Clay, how you doing, buddy?
Hello, I am doing good.
Good, glad to hear. It's been a little while since we've done this.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a bit of a lull there, but I am all moved in and settled and ready to get this party rolling again on the rig.
Excellent. You are now one time zone closer to me, which hopefully will translate to easier coordination of times, and you have a new job. So yeah, that's good news. How's life in the new place?
Good. New living quarters with the wife and dog are good. I've got, in fact, now like a separate room that my computer and recording stuff is in, so I'm not in the living room anymore. I don't have wood floors where my dog is clopping behind me with his super long like claws on his paws, and so
I thought you were in a separate room before. I didn't realize that was the living room.
Yeah, it was the best place to put the computer, but it was not away enough, and so my wife was like wanting to use the kitchen. She couldn't because it was right behind me, and not that she couldn't, but she was nice enough not to.
Sure.
But now I can close the door and not bother her and keep it nice and quiet. So that's been good. I have a new job that is amazing, and so things are good. It's nice to have some change. I kind of was doing the same thing in my life for the last 3 or 4 years, so it was good to change it up, and moving to a new state will definitely change things up.
Yeah, cool. How's the summer there? Is it hot there? Is it not too bad?
When we first got here, it was like super nice. Like at night, it got really cool. We would open our windows and like turn off the air conditioning. It was really cool. And then it's gotten a bit warmer since then, but still, compared to where I used to be at in Indiana, it's still much nicer and doesn't get close to as hot. We went to the fair the other day, and it was a little humid, but really it wasn't anywhere close to as bad as it has been in July. So and I imagine here in a month or so it'll probably get real nice again, so I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. I'm for some reason it's supposed to be nice up here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's just we got a bit of a heat wave, and it's about 100 degrees today. Ooh. Fahrenheit, which I don't know what that is Celsius, but 100 degrees Fahrenheit is hot. So I'm a little miserable, but figure out ways to beat the heat.
That's crazy. It's like 12 degrees cooler here right now.
Wow.
Than it is there. So not to rub it in.
That's not too bad. But at least I can say I'm simulating being at the place that this week's game is, which, speaking of which, we'll transition into that. This week's game is Disneyland Adventures, also known as Connect Disneyland Adventures. And let's jump into that a little bit. All right, so first off, as always, we'll just kind of talk about what the heck is this game. Clay, you want to start us off with that?
Yes. So before I do, actually, Jeff, do you want to tell the listeners why we picked this week's game? There's a specific reason that we totally planned this.
We totally, absolutely planned this because the week that we're recording this is the anniversary of Disneyland opening. It opened on July 17th of 1955. My math is not so good, but I think that's 63 years ago. Dating this now, which we usually don't, but hey, whatever. It's 2018. So yeah, we it's funny. We were planning to do something else. I think we talked about it previously,
right?
But it didn't work out with our guest host, so we decided, well, let's try to find another game and just I just thought of this one out of coincidence because I'd been playing it recently, and then all of a sudden, after we agreed to do it, I was like, oh, this works perfectly. So,
Yeah.
Anniversary of Disneyland episode.
Woo. So happy birthday, Disneyland.
Yeah.
But yes, for those of you who don't know, Connect Disneyland Adventures, or just Disneyland Adventures, is a game that originally came out on the 360. I think we might as well just mention up front, was later re-released or remastered and re-released for the Xbox One and Windows 10. And so it's seen two different versions. The original, it was a very big push for the Kinect, which is why it had the term, the word Kinect in the title. And once it re-released later on, they dropped that from the title and made the Kinect optional, added controller support. So, but yeah, the whole, I guess, object of the game is you are walking around a virtual version of Disneyland, interacting with characters from the park and from the movies and everything, and going into the rides and interacting with the rides and these mini games style parts of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, there's a NES game called Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
You're right.
Which this game kind of reminds me of. And
yeah, I was thinking that.
Everything I've read about this, about the Kinect game, nobody ever draws comparisons to this from everything I've read.
Interesting.
Anyways.
Yeah,
But
I actually never seen that either.
I feel like it's totally an homage because in Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, you walk around in like this top-down RPG style thing, and then you just go into different rides, and then there are like side-scrolling levels and stuff.
Right.
It was developed by Capcom. We totally have to do it on the show at some point. It's
Yeah,
actually a lot more fun than I thought it would be. But I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that, where except there's a lot more to the walking around the parks part in this game, which is probably actually my favorite part.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Maybe doesn't sound super appetite like you're walking around the park, but they really did do, I think, a pretty stellar job with it. So, but in a nutshell, that's what you're working with. It's a third-person game where you have control of the camera and you can run around. I guess they added jumping in the Xbox One version. I guess that wasn't originally in the 360 version.
I didn't know you could jump.
Yeah, you press A and you can jump. It literally does nothing. You can't.
Yeah,
jump
I've never
over
done
like
that.
anything, but yeah, you
funny.
can jump, I guess. So
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Jeff, would you like to go a little more in depth with some more info about the game?
Yeah, so it was developed by Frontier Developments. They are best known for the Roller Coaster Tycoon series. They took over after the first one as the developer. And so they did Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and its expansions, and then I believe, and then 3 for sure. They did Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. They've done the Zoo Tycoon games for the Xbox. Connectimals, I think was them right before this game. Jurassic World Evolution, they just released, well, again, dating this episode, they just released like a couple weeks ago. So they're very well known for theme park games, and so I think this was a natural title for them to be assigned to or to work on, or if maybe they came up with it. I have no idea what the background is as far as whose idea it was, who got it done and made. Microsoft published it, so they were obviously the ones kind of on board to support it, so I think that's cool. The original version, of course, was Frontier. The HD remaster, or whatever you want to call it, I guess not HD because it was already HD, but the modern Xbox One Windows 10 remaster was done by Asobo Studios. They've done a lot of ports on other Disney titles, like Toy Story 3. They may have even developed that.
WALL-E.
In and of itself, WALL-E. I think some of the Cars games.
Ratatouille.
The other Kinect Disney game, which was Pixar Rush. It's another one I have.
That?
Yeah, I have that. It's very similar to this one, without the big park. So
okay,
it's another one we should definitely do down the road.
Nice.
If you like this one, you'll
basically.
probably and it's got on the Xbox One. It has the added controller controls.
Oh, okay. They literally did the same.
They did the
thing.
exact same thing, yeah. And it's we'll get into that whenever we do cover that. It's very similar. But yeah, so they're kind of no stranger to Disney. They're no stranger to this sort of game. So it's good for them to work on the new version. Cannot remember if it's Xbox One X enhanced. I feel like it was or it is, but I don't have one, so I can't confirm that. And
the Disneyland Adventures game?
Yeah, this one.
I believe it is. I think I read.
Yeah,
that.
I think they did something with it, which we'll dive into with graphics and stuff and other stuff to talk about that. But the original version of this game on the Kinect for Xbox 360 was released in late November of 2011, November 15th in the US, Australia 2 days later on the 17th, the European Union the next day on the 18th, and then Japan got it like a couple weeks later on December 8th. Then it was released on the Xbox One and Windows 10 in Halloween on October 31st of 2017. So yeah, it was a surprise announcement at E3 2017 where they just sort of were like, yeah, we're bringing this up to the modern console. My guess is that it kind of came out later in the Kinect's life. If you think that it was done by the same people that did Kinectimals, that means that was a Kinect launch game, which means this must have been 2 or 3 years well, I guess not, it was only a year after. But at that point, the appeal of the Kinect was already starting to wear, if that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably it didn't meet sales and might not have hit as many people as they had hoped, and there was a lot of criticism about the lack of controller support for people that didn't want to use the Kinect controls. And we'll talk about that also later in the episode as far as why that was a problem. And yeah, so moving on from there, I think that's pretty much it as far as the release and details of that. But we'll jump into the history of the game. Do you have any history with this game or any nostalgia?
I do not, unfortunately. This is a new one for me for some reason. I don't know. I don't know if it was the Kinect or just the fact that it's tied to Disneyland. I don't know why, but I never gave this thing a fair shake. I guess I just never really saw like a proper trailer. Or maybe I thought it was just really like dumbed down for kids. But for whatever reason, in my head, it just never thought that it would be something that I would enjoy, despite the fact that it's Disney. And I kind of even forgot that it was like it had been re-released. I don't remember hearing that or being like, oh, cool. So it was really under the radar for me. I didn't know a lot about it until you mentioned that it was available on Xbox One if you have Game Pass, which I do, and I was like, oh, well, I definitely need to go check that out. And so, in preparation for this week's episode was the first time I ever played it. So, but I was surprised at what I found. I'll just say that. So, that's my history.
Yeah, so for myself, I remember it being announced. I couldn't tell you when it was, but at the time I was working at Disney World, so it was very much in my mindset, the parks and things about the parks, and I followed Disney Parks news much more closely than I do even now. And so I was very much aware of it. I really wanted it. I did not get an original Kinect until around 2013 or 2014. So I just didn't have a way to play it originally because it didn't have any controller support back then. So I didn't get it immediately. I followed it closely. I watched the reviews and all that good stuff, but I went ahead and bought it. It was on sale at like Best Buy for like 10 or 20 bucks around the time I got my Kinect for the 360. So I picked it up and played the original. And then when the remaster came out, I followed that closely. It was only 30 bucks at launch, which, you know, to be fair, is not a horrible price for something, especially if somebody didn't own it. But if you already own the original, it was maybe a little steep. But I went ahead and picked it up on sale a couple months after launch. I want to say maybe around Christmas or New Year's. It was like 10 or 20 bucks. So it was at a discount.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I picked it up pretty cheap back then, and then obviously it's on Game Pass now, so I could have played it anyway. But yeah, so I've had it for a while now, and have played it quite a bit. I don't know how many hours. I'd say maybe 10 or so, maybe a little more.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've a little bit of history, a little bit of nostalgia. Disneyland is the first Disney park I went to as a kid. I went there 3 times before ever going to Disney World, so it's kind of my original I was a West Coast kid, so it's also, it's the closer, more common one for us over here. And I was more than anything, I wanted to see the recreation of the park and how closely they paid attention to detail, and I was not disappointed. We'll jump into that later as well.
I never had a 360 Connect. I had a 360, but I never owned the Connect for it. It wasn't until I got a one that I actually picked one up, which is probably the backwards way of doing that.
Yeah.
I always thought they were cool.
Yeah.
I liked them. I never was like they're stupid. I just never either could afford one or just didn't have whatever. And so when I finally did get one, I was like, oh, this will be great. And then it was like they very shortly after stopped really supporting it. And I was like, all right, well, I guess it's going to be how I turn my Xbox on and off. And that might be about it. So I did not play this game. Maybe I'm jumping ahead. I didn't play it with the Kinect controls. I played with the controller. And so you'll have to kind of speak into those things more.
Sure.
How those worked and didn't work. And then as far as my history with the park goes, I've only been to Disneyland once. So Disney
World. And as
World,
an adult or as a kid?
As an adult.
Okay,
we just I never was in California until I was stationed in Las Vegas. Did I finally make my way out there?
Okay.
So it was then. Yeah. But I've been to like Disney World and all the adjacent parks numerous times as a kid. So I spent most of my time in the Florida parks. So while it's still relatively like you kind of can find your way around, it was still a little bit like, this would probably be cooler if it was Disney World because I'd probably know a little more of what I was doing.
Right.
But that's not a big deal.
I had wished it had maybe sold better and would have influenced them to do a Disney World version with like all 4 parks there or something. But it doesn't seem like that's on the table. But that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Minecraft, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a Minecraft server that literally has the most intricately detailed recreation of the entire Walt Disney World Resort that I've ever seen. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, I need to download that. Yeah.
I haven't even played that since 2012, and I'm sure it's just like infinitely better now.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, anyway, not what we're reviewing today, so we'll move into our gameplay discussion. Alrighty, and for gameplay discussion, we will kind of go over not just gameplay, but the visuals, the audio, of course the gameplay and difficulty, and any sort of story that there may be. And we'll start it off with the visuals. You want to go ahead and lead us off with those?
Yes, so I'll just throw a couple things I noticed up front. One of the first things you get to do in the game is create your character, which honestly is probably the most disturbing part of the game, if you ask me. I don't know what it is about like the faces for these kids, but they kind of creep me out. And I don't know. Like I know they wanted to make them real expressive and stuff, and that's fine. But I don't know. I started playing and I was like, normally I would try to make like a version of myself that looks pretty accurate, but in this I was like, I just want to make a really weird looking kid. And so I sent you a picture of this kid, but I gave him a flat top haircut, which no kids wear flat tops anymore.
No way.
He has like red hair, like almost orange, and then I gave him like flannel shirt and like camo shorts. He's this like really redneck like ginger kid.
He's like Forrest Gump.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, I just kind of thought I chuckled at that a little bit. So, wasn't a huge fan of the kids' facial features, but other than that, graphic-wise, I was relatively pretty pleased with it. It looked better than I thought it would, especially some of the mini-game levels. Like the Peter Pan level specifically when you're flying around
That's
London.
My favorite one.
Dude, it looks so good.
They did a real good job with that one. Yeah.
I was actually kind of blown away. I was like, wow, they're like, I mean, obviously you can only see so far or whatever, but like it actually looked really good. And so there's a couple like really pixelated textures that don't look as good up close. But most of the character models of the characters at the park look really good, and most of just the visuals themselves, I think they did a really good job on. So just kind of thinking through those, I thought they did a really good job with those, and choosing to go with like the actual characters and not like mascot versions of the characters. It was a little weird at times, but I think overall is the right call. So, and then there was a little extra touches that I really appreciated, like when you go into the stores. I sent you a picture of this as well. There's like stuff on the back rack that you can see, and there's like DVDs of Disney movies.
Oh, I don't think I saw that one if you sent it.
You never responded to it, so
my bad.
My feelings were hurt, but
yeah, that's my bad.
It happens. And so my parents never loved me, so I'm used to it. No, I'm just kidding. So little touches like that where they threw little extra things in the background, because for whatever reason you can buy like DVDs of Disney movies at the parks, which I never understood. Like, I don't think I would not buy that here, but you can, I guess. And so
get it autographed by Mickey, man.
That's true. That would be kind of cool. But so those are a couple things just off of the top of my head that I think, outside of like the creepy facial features of the kids, I really liked everything else and thought they did a really good job with it. I can't speak into the 360 version, but the Xbox One, I was actually pretty impressed, and I only have a regular original Xbox One, so I'm sure it probably looks even better on the X. So
totally. So as I agree with everything you've said, and I really liked how they did like a 1-to-1 recreation of the park. It's, every trash can, every planter, like everything, the little statues in the center of the hub right in front of the castle, all the water effects and lots of different things. The front of most of the rides are accurate. One interesting thing is that this came out originally before Disney had owned Lucasfilm, and so the Indiana Jones ride, the Star Wars rides, or areas are just completely absent. So the building is there, but there's no interaction. Well, I don't know if we specifically went into detail when you were explaining the game at the beginning, because you kind of mentioned it, but the way that the game kind of you sort of mentioned it, that you go to an attraction and then you play like a mini game of that attraction. So it's like every place you would go ride a ride at Disney before, like Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, you'd go play a Buzz Lightyear mini game that's not exactly like the ride, but it's an homage to it and stuff like that, like Peter Pan, etc. But like the Star Wars building, like where Star Tours would be, is just, it's a huge portion of the right side of Tomorrowland, and it's just kind of unused and unmarked. It's kind of got some of the graphical Tomorrowland things on it, but not any of the Star Wars branding or interactivity. So that was a little bit of a bummer. You would have thought, if they're going to do it, just go for the license, but I'm not sure why they didn't. Yeah. If at the time it was too expensive or whatever, I have no idea. But now, and then that's, even more unfortunate that when they re-released it, they could have totally added a Star Wars game, and put the logos into the park, and they opted not to. They did a straight port, no bonus content. So that was a little disappointing. The other thing is that obviously Star Wars Land had already been announced and was under construction, but they didn't even add that as sort of like a sneak peek, or maybe they'll add it as DLC. I highly doubt it, but you never know. So little things like that. Like the characters, like you said, they're the character versions rather than the costume versions, which it works. They look correct for the most part. Some of them are maybe first time CGI, like Snow White. I don't know if she's ever been rendered in 3D, and so it was interesting to see like that model. Some of them have been in other things. I'm not sure what. Obviously Wreck-It Ralph 2 is coming out and has like caricaturized ones that match that look, but as far as kind of trying to represent the 2D versions of the princesses, for example, more than anything else, I think they did a pretty good job, because at the parks it's a real person, and so they could have gone that route and had it look like the character in the game, but with like Cinderella's clothes or Snow White's clothes, but they went for the character look, and I like that. As far as the level designs and all that, like you said, the game levels all look great. There is some visual bugs with the game that are pretty severe. And I don't know if this is because I also have a core original Xbox One, but like there's times when maybe you're rounding the corner coming out of Fantasyland and heading out towards Main Street, and the ground texture just doesn't load for like upwards of a minute at some points. I mean, it's sometimes 10, 15 seconds, but I've had it literally be up to a minute where it doesn't load, and it just looks like muddy garbage, you know, and all the surrounding textures or the castle or, you know, whatever. Really unfortunate they didn't optimize that, and I don't know if that was probably, my guess is it's a problem with the port and how memory was managed on the 360 versus the one. I haven't played the original recently enough to know if that's a problem on the original or not. But it's a really unfortunate bug because it does definitely break the immersion and just looks terrible. You know, like an N64 game or something. But not saying N64 games are terrible, but on a modern HD era, having N64 quality textures is not fun. So anyway, the animations are all really good, especially in the characters. The you know, the families walking around the park are they look fine. It's all very similar to what they call the peeps in Roller Coaster Tycoon, if you ever played that game, or the third one. They're characterized people, like you said in the character creator. Speaking of that, I could not figure out how to change my eye color, so my dude has green eyes, even though I tried to make him look like myself with blue eyes. I couldn't find that.
Yeah, I didn't change
oblivious.
it either. It's either not an option or I missed it too. But
yeah,
I noticed when I got done,
oversight.
I was like, oh, my eye color is.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it like red or something, so I looked like I had rabies. But,
soulless, yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't.
So yeah, I don't think you can change that. So, you know, little weird things like that. One thing I do like is how many outfits you can unlock in the game, and you can kind of change your clothes apart from the original outfit you pick. But there's some really cool ones. There's ones where your little dude dresses up, or dudette dresses up like a character, but like not like a Disney costume character, but sort of like a Stitch hat and a Stitch hoodie or something. You know, and then there's like graphic tees, and I mean there's good variety. And then like full on costumes like the Mad Hatter's hat and his tux and stuff. So I really like that kind of stuff, and you kind of unlock those by doing little things for the characters here and there, or you can go buy them in the gift shop. So like different variations on how to do that. But yeah. So
yeah, I love that part. I thought that was awesome because the stuff they give you up front kind of sucks.
Yeah, totally.
But I think that's totally fine if they had better things available, which they did. You mentioned character animations and stuff. I noticed at one point when I walked by Pinocchio, he kind of did, I don't even know what it was, but it's like one of those kind of body things that Pinocchio did.
Like a marionette type thing?
Yeah, and just like something that he did in the movie, where just the way he walked or the way he was like repositioning himself or something. I don't know, but it felt like they actually spent the time, rather than just like a creepy puppet boy just sitting there and just staring at you as you walked by. They actually gave it a lot of like personality and stuff, so I appreciated that. I thought that was pretty cool. It's also worth mentioning that pretty much everything is like cell shaded in this game, if that's the right word, where everything has like a black
oh yeah, I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, you're right. Well, I don't know if it's everything, because it does actually change art style depending on the
so maybe it's
the
just
mini game. Like Winnie the Pooh specifically. The Winnie the Pooh mini game is super cell shaded to match more of that. The cartoon.
See, I'm looking at Peter Pan. You're right.
Okay,
Once I got out of Peter Pan, it's not. It's like outside. It's not really like that. So that must just be in the 2D animation style, right?
Yeah, and I can definitely appreciate. That's a really good point you brought up. Because I can definitely appreciate that they're literally switching art styles to kind of merge into the mini games, which I think is cool, and not a lot of games obviously do that. So it's impressive. It's impressive tech wise to be able to do both.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, yep. So
nice.
Yeah, the attention to detail is staggering in my opinion. Like just the everything in the parks, and we'll get into the sound and stuff, but just everything is. It was done with love. It was done with care. It wasn't just a shoddy, hey, let's crank this out and make money. It looked like they really tried with this game, and I appreciate that. So, anyway, anything else visually from you?
That's it right now. If I think of anything else,
we'll jump in with it. Yeah. Cool. With that, we'll jump into the audio of the game, and I'll start off just kind of commenting on the music. So, as someone who worked in the parks and someone who visited a lot, I can say that I have a huge appreciation for this game using the official background audio tracks from the parks. More ambient than anything for as far as walking around the park, which, to some degree may be a little bummer that there's not a little more zippy of a soundtrack, but on the flip side, the accuracy is pretty cool again. One cool thing, and I don't know if this was on purpose or just them maybe accidentally pulling up some old background music when they were researching it, I've no idea. But there's a song on Main Street USA that is no longer played in the loop that was there up until like the 90s, called Flitterin' from, I want to say the movie was Summer Magic. Might be wrong on that. But it's my mother-in-law's absolutely favorite Disneyland song, and she was really sad when they took it out. So it's the only reason I'm aware of it. And they have that in there.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. So the Main Street music is the one I'm most familiar with. That's where I worked in the parks, and that's super accurate. Then the Tomorrowland is right. Like all the ambient background music is perfectly done. And then the mini games all have music either directly from their properties like Peter Pan or Pinocchio, or have kind of new, really well done scores that are orchestrated. They feel good. They feel right. They kind of highlight the action that's happening. So. Yeah, I love the music. Do you have any comments on the music, or do you want to jump into sound effects or anything like that?
I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it all.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, maybe this is moving to the next thing, but
sure.
One of the things that stood out to me was all of the dialogue that the other people say as you walk by them. You hear little bits of conversation, and there was a couple things that I was playing it, my wife would be like, did that guy just say, and then she would say something that was really weird. I'm like, yeah, I think he did. And some of it you're like, I would love to hear what the context of that conversation was. And so it was just kind of weird. Like, it wasn't bad, or it didn't really take me out of it. It was just kind of like, huh, that was a really weird end of a sentence that I happened to catch.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I thought it was cool. And sometimes people are like, oh, look, there's the princess or something. And
right. Yeah. It's very,
she is,
very context aware, which is cool. Yeah. It's like if they're in Fantasyland, they'll talk about a Fantasyland ride or a Fantasyland character, and yeah, it's pretty cool. The voice acting is debatably good. It's a little bit kind of stage sounding. It doesn't sound like what a real kid would say or a real dad would say. It sounds like a guy doing a theatrical voice, but
right.
The other thing is the narrator, the little, I don't know what he's called or what he is. He's this little iconic little dude. He looks like a character. He's kind of like the logo for Frontier.
Yeah.
And he's sort of your narrator, and he gets a little redundant if you're not following. So the game will kind of guide you to your next objective if you're not doing anything. Probably aimed at little kids, and I think you can turn it off, but he gets pretty redundant, or will say something and not really tell you what it is, like, oh, look up there's a blah blah blah, and it up there could be anywhere around you, and it's just
who got redundant is in the mini games. Pretty much every ride gives you a companion that are with. Like in the Pirates of the Caribbean one, they give you this guy who's probably supposed to be Jack Sparrow but isn't, and
right,
and he's like, you're like hitting alligators with oars, and he's like, that'll teach him, and then you go do it again, that'll teach him, and
a lot of redundancies.
Yeah, so those got a little annoying just because the gameplay was a bit repetitive in some of them, but as far as being out in the park, it didn't bother me too much, but definitely in the rides themselves, some of the dialogue got a bit redundant. So
definitely a good point. And then I guess the last thing would be like the sound effects. In the game, you collect coins throughout the park constantly and throughout the mini games. So the sound they make, I think this is similar to Brave, and it's a satisfying little cha-ching, and you get those. And those are fine. A lot of the other sound effects are accurate to their properties, and I don't recall being bothered by any of them, which is a good thing. So I think they're faithfully done. They use a lot of the right sound effects and originals probably from the movies or from the old animations or whatever. So yeah, I think those are well done.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. That's pretty much all I have for sound. Do you got anything else, or ready to get into the meat and potatoes?
Yeah, man, I think that's good.
Okay. So from here, we'll go into gameplay and difficulty. So the core gameplay, as we discussed, is that you are exploring Disneyland. You're walking around Disneyland, going on an adventure, and the adventure comes in entering the rides and doing these different mini games. Since the game was built around the Kinect, a lot of them are very simplistic, kind of on rails things where it's kind of like move left, move right to collect stuff or avoid obstacles. Occasionally, you get an action that you can launch something or do some sort of move, but in general, a lot of them work that way. Peter Pan's my favorite, like we mentioned earlier. I like the freedom of flying, and I just like the visuals and just kind of being up high in the sky. Pirates of the Caribbean one wasn't too bad. It's pretty cool. And then there's some that are kind of like static screens rather than on rails. So like the Matterhorn, you throw snowballs at Yetis, and all of them play like arcade games. They all play like either on rails, Virtua Cop style type stuff, or other kind of similar arcade games where you're on, moving through and just avoiding obstacles, or stationary shooting things. So with the original Kinect, it didn't have as many motion points and fluidity as the newer version Kinect, so they're very simplistic controls, like lean left or step left or whatever. The absolute worst thing about the original version was to walk around the park, you had to hold your arm out in front of you and either move it left or right to turn, kind of like a forklift, and it was awful. It was exhausting to just hold your arm up, and I mean, pretty decent sized park. And to get to anywhere and to navigate nuanced movement, it was awful. So the most welcome addition to me in the re-release was just being able to use the controller to move around.
Yeah, I feel like your arm gets tired after keeping it up that long. Like I would just...
It really does, and you don't think about it, but yeah, like just holding your arm out in front of you gets exhausting after like 2 minutes. So
yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No, was not enjoyable. The mini games originally were decent enough. The original Kinect worked fine, and like I said, they're pretty simplistic. They're very forgiving. You don't have like a health bar, I don't think, so you can kind of run into stuff. You just lose coins, but your objective is to try and get like a high score for each level and get like a 3-star or something like that by collecting coins. And there's certain collectibles in each level that you can get that are specific to that level, and all sorts of different things like that. Hidden tickets or hidden somethings that you can find kind of off the beaten path or off all the way to the side. And
I think there are Mickey
ears or pens or something. Yeah. So yeah, and I don't have here how many. We've got the list in here, but I don't know how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But a good amount. Like a lot of the rides, maybe not all of them, but like a fair amount of them have mini games, and each one is pretty unique. Some of them are very similar, but decent amount of variety, and all of them faithfully created to match their source material, be it either from a movie, especially like Peter Pan, or even like the Pixar ones, or non-movie ones like the Haunted Mansion or the Matterhorn, or some creative liberties and new characters introduced and stuff like that. So yeah, it looks like you counted up for me, and there's 18 of them, so it's pretty good amount to have. And the last thing, real quick, before I let you jump in, they all have phases, usually 3 per attraction. So it's like first one you might start up. It's kind of like a setup. It's like a 3-act play. Like for example, Peter Pan, I think you start in London and then end up in Neverland and then end up like fighting Captain Hook around the ship or something like that. So it's like each one has 3 phases, and the gameplay remains similar between all 3, if not identical, but then some of them might introduce a new gameplay mechanic in a different act, or switch it up a little bit.
Right.
And I like that. I like the variety. I like how it plays. It's a little janky with the controller since it was based off motion controls, but it works well enough. And like I said, it's forgiving enough that it's not frustrating, even if it's not maybe the most smooth and responsive, if that makes sense. So go ahead with your input on all that. I kind of just rambled there for a bit, but I had a lot to say.
There is a lot to cover, and that is one thing about this game. There's just a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think there would be as much. There's lots of collectibles. I noticed on most of the levels, you briefly mentioned there's like alternate paths. Sometimes like you literally either you could just fly to the left or fly to the right, and then it changed it up.
Yep.
And then in like some of the Jungle Cruise levels, you have to shoot this certain thing with water, and then it would open like a secret door.
Yeah.
And so it does kind of require you to play through multiple times to find all the secret unlockables.
It's kind of like Pokemon Snap, isn't it? I just thought of that just right
totally.
now. Yeah, it's on rails, and you can open up yeah, wow. Okay, keep going.
So my thought, I got a couple things here. With the ride levels, like, yeah, they're not like the most in-depth, but they're fine. But the cool thing is it's really more of a cinematic adventure.
Yeah.
Like right now I'm looking at the Peter Pan level, which I know we keep bringing up. But one of the levels of it is you're following Peter around Neverland, and you're flying in and out of caves. And then at the end you're getting shot at by Captain Hook. And there's like water shooting up. And it really does, like when I was playing, I'm like, man, this feels like how they would make a ride.
Yeah, super immersive.
Right. And so it's just like, I mean, it looks like if they had made it 3D or something, like it would be something they would put, maybe not at Disney because it's a little like super fast, but maybe like a Universal ride where it's like one of those 3D ones
like
that you sit in. Yeah, Spider-Man, exactly. Something like that. And so honestly, the downside was like, man, I wish the Peter Pan ride at the park was actually this cool. Like,
yeah, they could do it as like a VR ride. That would be kind of cool too.
Yeah, and so like, I don't know, it just showed like a lot of potential that, wow, this would be a way cooler ride.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe you're not necessarily controlling it. Obviously, you would just kind of be along for the ride. But
sure.
the on the rails thing works well because obviously rides are on rails, and so I think it worked well. Rather than like leaving a very open-ended level where you have to run around and collect stuff or something, I think what they did probably was for the best. But then they also symbolically add your character into it to allow you to be a part of the movie or the experience or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, there's just so many that there were a couple times where I was like, all right, I don't have enough time before we have to record to play all of this. Like, I didn't allot myself enough time thinking that it wouldn't be as in depth. So it was like I had to be kind of picky about. I was like, all right, I can either do It's a Small World After All, or I can go to the Haunted Mansion. And I was like, I'm going to the Haunted Mansion. So
nice.
So there's just a lot in the games themselves, but then also in the main area. And really that's where I was enjoying most of my time. After I went to a store and I basically purchased every autograph book right off the bat after I had enough money. And so I was just having fun going around getting autographs from everybody, trying to because they have different autograph books for different like categories. They have like a villain autograph book.
Right.
And so there's like a collector side of myself that really was being pulled in by this game. So
totally.
So it has that, and then there's pins, which the last time I was at the Disney parks, I got completely addicted to buying and trading pins. And
it's
so
a dangerous game. It's an expensive one.
Yeah, it is. And then you can do that in this game where you go around to different areas of the park, and different stores have pins that you can only get in that area. And so that is really addicting. The costumes were really addicting, and so I was buying all kinds of stuff. I got this really cool Stitch hat that basically your head fits inside Stitch's mouth. Yeah. And so his little body is like hanging out like behind your head.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I thought was like super, like, I don't even know if that's a real hat, but it should be. It was just like really cool. I can't recall. Yeah. And then like I got like a Stitch shirt as well, and there was a Aladdin costume that I almost bought that looked really cool. And so there's just some fun customizable and collectible things. So I was just having fun running around, finding everybody, and just kind of doing all that stuff. But the last thing I think gameplay wise that we need to talk about is there actually is more of a like an overall arcing storyline, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Where the game starts you out and Mickey's like, hey, can you go get Donald Donald's autograph, and then you get that, and then he's like, can you take it to Goofy? You give it to Goofy, and he gets his own autograph book, and then it goes from there. And I didn't get super far in that. I don't know if there's like an end game. Maybe you. I don't know.
No, I've like I said, I've sunk tons of hours into it, and I'm still maybe not even halfway through it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when you pause it, you can see how much you've completed, and it's like, whoa, there is a lot to do in this game.
Yeah, and the further along you get with those characters, like Cinderella starts losing, I don't know if it's magic wands or shoes or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's wands.
They start looking for items, and you in the main world you start unlocking new items to interact with the environment. So there's
that's right. I saw that.
There's
got any of
like
those.
A ray gun, and there's this thing to like water the plants or move the plants or something. Like there's just tons of different things, and you progressively unlock new stuff as you complete more things for the characters. And it's pretty well thought out, and it's not like they just give you everything all at once and you just kind of mess around. It's like you are progressing, you're unlocking stuff. And then there's photo spots where you can like take a picture with the character in front of like the castle and do a pose. Based either if you're on Kinect, you can actually pose, or you can use like preset poses with the controller. So God, there's just a lot to it.
Yeah, there's hidden Mickeys.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a real thing, for those who don't know. And so I got really tickled when I saw that, and I actually started like looking really hard. And then I realized, like, oh, they're actually a little bit more obvious than than
more so than the real ones,
right? Than the real ones. And so I was looking really hard. And then I'm like, oh, it's this very obvious hole in the wall that is clearly shaped like Mickey.
Right.
And so I don't know. Yeah, there's just a lot to do and so much stuff to uncover. Because when you think about a game like walking around the park, like it's probably gonna get old fast, but there really is so much to it, and I've just barely scratched the surface of it. So
no, each time I play I kind of gravitate to like one land, and I might do one or two of the rides there and maybe just kind of explore and interact and do some of the character tasks. And I'll sink an hour or maybe 2 hours into it and not have covered 75% of the rest of the park. So it's got a lot more depth than you would have ever imagined. And I kind of forgot that when I suggested it this week. You can get the gist of it pretty quickly, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like Viva Pinata if you've, I know you've played it, but if anyone else has played that. It's very simple on the surface, but you realize that kind of just going down the rabbit hole, there's just so much more depth than meets the eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I want to mention, we kind of forgot on the audio side. So you meet and greet with up to 43 different Disney characters, as we mentioned, so there's a lot of them out there, which really helps having them all out there. It makes it feel more exciting. You're around a corner and you see Pluto sitting there and you're like, holy cow, that's awesome. You run over there and say hi to him or whatever. But most of the characters are fully voice acted. Closely fully voice acted, I guess, maybe. And so from what I could tell, the majority like super close to relatively sounding like the original voice actors. I know like Captain Hook sounds really similar. Obviously it's not the same guy that originally did it. And then you got like Jim Hanks doing Woody and stuff. And so some of them are maybe not exactly the originals, but still a lot of them are. And so that was really neat. Just hearing them and talking to them. In fact, at one point, I think the first character I ran into was Aurora. I was trying to figure out how to interact with them. So I think I danced with her. Yeah. And when I came back to her later, she like the first thing she said to me was, I really enjoyed dancing with you earlier. And I was like, oh, so she like remembered. Yeah. Or the game like reminds you like, oh, I remember that we did this thing together earlier.
Yep.
And so I thought that was kind of cool that they like purposely have things in place that kind of trigger back to old. So I liked that. There's also these tour guides that are scattered throughout the game that if you talk to them, they will give you trivia or facts about the park. Yep. And so that was really cool too. I thought that was really neat. Just hearing different things that they talked about. And so if you're a big fan of the park, like this is a no-brainer. You should definitely check this out. My sister loves the Disney parks. She's a couple years older than me, but she doesn't own an Xbox or like a PC or anything. But I wish she could play this game because I feel like she would really like it. But unfortunately, she just doesn't have any modern consoles. So, but I feel like she would love this. Unfortunately, so
yeah.
I was super stoked when I saw Stitch was a character. I thought that was super sweet. I was like, oh yes, like there's some cool ones. Trying to think what some of the other really cool ones. Pinocchio kind of caught me off guard. Baloo looked really cool. I thought the art they did on him looked really neat. I didn't see Mowgli, so I don't know what he looked like.
Oh yeah, I haven't found him either.
Some of these, I think you have to do certain things to get them to come out.
I think either you complete some of the levels or you complete a task for another character. Yeah.
Right. Because I kept looking for the Queen of Hearts and the White Rabbit, and I couldn't find either of them, and needed them to like finish off some things. So the only one that I beat all of the levels for was the Peter Pan thing. So I don't know if that's what made Captain Hook come out or if he was already out.
I believe it is. Yeah, I think that's what gets him out there.
So that kind of motivates you to want to beat all of the levels. And so that's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, it's back to that immersion and the the gameplay and unlocking and progressive and all that stuff, like that. It's not just an open sandbox, which it feels like it is at first, but then the progression system and the reward, the constant new things is just, it's a very welcome thing. And I really appreciate that they did it that way. Yeah. Because they could have easily not,
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think anything else maybe that we haven't hit on other than our final thoughts.
I think we briefly touched on the photos, and there's different types of photos, and we kind of went with, there's the hidden Mickeys, there's the character snapshots, and the photo pass photos. And in and of themselves, they're pretty self-explanatory what they do, and so that's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah.
And we've pretty much touched on what the overarching story is, so we don't really need to go into that. We usually cover that. You're on an adventure in Disneyland, and you progress by interacting with the characters and their rides and environment. So pretty straightforward. I think we're probably pretty good to jump into final thoughts.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. I'll start off with that. You can give yours, and then I'll do the closing. So, this is a game that I was interested in very early on. I remember reading the reviews when it came out, and people generally liked it but didn't like the Kinect controls. And so when it was announced for the re-release, I was stoked. And I don't know if, it was 2017. There was a whole lot of other stuff that you and me and our friend group was kind of interested in, like Sea of Thieves and things like that. But I was still following it and really excited for it to come out. I wanted to get it day one, didn't quite have the means to, but we got it on sale a couple months later, and I've been really happy with it. It's not perfect. It's got its ugly side with the texture issues, and the frame rate's not super great. But it's one of those things where it's like I wish it had been optimized a little better, but it's still really fun and has great attention to detail. And I think the good far outweighs the bad, especially if you're a fan of Disney parks more than anything, but even just the Disney properties, as far as characters and stuff. It's pretty cool. Don't expect super duper deep gameplay, but expect discovery and something. If you've got kids, definitely would be fun to play around with them. I feel like there's some sort of 2-player kind of assistant mode similar to like Mario Galaxy or Yooka-Laylee, but don't have any experience with it. But I feel like I read that.
I read that too, and I was like, oh, I probably should have checked that out, but I don't remember it even telling me about it.
Right.
So
it might just be on the menu, but yeah, it's not. It's not like the two of you can do split screen, explore the park or anything like that. But little bit of an option there. But yeah, I really like this game. I was pleasantly surprised by it, even though I was looking forward to it. Like when I experienced it, it was like, well, you know what? Even if it's not that great of a game, the fact that I can walk around Disneyland whenever I want would be awesome enough, and it didn't disappoint. The park is a character in and of itself, and it's very well done.
Nice. Yeah, I had low expectations going in, and I guess I never heard that the game had been, I assume it was promoted as being a very faithful representation of the park. But maybe if I had known that, beforehand, I would have been more interested in checking it out. but I just assumed they'd cut corners and things would be, just kind of generalized.
Approximations, yeah.
Exactly.
I thought the same thing. Yep.
So I was also very pleasantly surprised and super happy that, thankful that Jeph suggested this, because I don't know if I would have played it otherwise, which shame on me, because I have a Disney video game podcast. I should want to play it all. And so I'm working on that. Yeah, I think you should definitely check this out. If you have an Xbox and you have Game Pass, you should totally go
for
get
sure.
it. Like, it's a no-brainer. I think you'll find yourself sinking more time into it, more than you would think. Heck, if you got kids and you are planning to take them anytime soon, like, I would have loved to have been able to play this game in anticipation to going there as a kid.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because you could literally, like, a kid could totally memorize the entire park just playing this game and know exactly where things were. Because at certain points I was like, how do I get to the Haunted Mansion? And I'm like asking my wife, who grew up in California and Las Vegas, like, maybe she'll know. I'm like, it's around here somewhere. And so I was trying to find it without having to look it up or something. And so I don't know. I just think as a kid, being able to play this game, it would have been even more, like, awesome. Just, like, getting stoked to go there in real life, like, in the future or whatever.
Yeah. Totally.
So super cool for kids, still really fun for adults. Honestly, I think it served its purpose when I got done and I realized, like, frick, man, I really want to go to Disney now. And,
yep. It works as a really great advertisement for sure.
It totally is. And I was just like, man,
I wondered about that when it came out. I thought, like, are people going to still want to go to the park if they can experience it virtually? But yes, you definitely will. Plus, there's nothing like riding a ride, but still, like, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and so I really liked it. I loved the amount of characters. I loved the additional outfits and collectibles and stuff. And so I sat in front of my TV the other night. I think I ended up drinking like 4 beers and just had a great time playing this game. So, it was quite the grown-up night for me. And then I was waiting for another game on my Xbox to finish downloading. So I went from this game, which was all pretty and cute and happy, to this game called Vermintide. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No, but it sounds interesting.
It's basically Left 4 Dead, but with giant rats and instead of zombies. And so I went from playing Disneyland to a bloody, gory, shoot 'em up kind of game. It was awesome. So
God bless video games.
Yeah, you can take it anywhere and everywhere. But yeah, no, don't judge this based off the whole motion control gimmick. Especially the HD remake looks really good for the most part, and I think it's a fun game, and you should definitely check it out if you're a fan of the parks or Disney at all. So
totally. Alrighty, well, I think that pretty much sums it up, and we will head into our closing. So thank you all for joining us this week, and as always, we ask that you follow, if you liked it, you follow us on Twitter at mouse_bytes with a Y, BYTES. For there, you'll find our links to all the shows each time they go live, and you can also go to thenintendovillage.com, and there you'll find links to all of our episodes as well as other great shows that they kind of have all in one place. You can find reviews and other content. And our episodes are uploaded to the Nintendo Village YouTube, so you'll see some video footage along with it if you're just listening to us on a podcast app. And vice versa, if you're on a podcast app, if you like the show, give us a rating, and especially on iTunes, that helps out for discoverability, as far as I know. That's pretty much it. So thank you guys all once again for joining us, and our next episode should be this time The Emperor's New Groove for the Game Boy Color.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we're gonna really try and get that one done, since we've been promising it for like a while now. So hopefully that'll come to fruition, and you'll have that next time. So thanks again, everybody, and just keep moving forward.
All right, guys, we'll see you later. Hope we can connect again.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.